Hello my friends and welcome to the first episodes of Behind the Scenes. This is going to be a reward for the $5 tier on Patreon, and the first episode is going to be free and accessible by everyone to give you a preview of what the next episodes are going to be. And the first topic is to develop your artistic eye and your artistic language, basically. And a great source to do that is Google Arts and Culture Project, because there you can look at a lot of really interesting stuff, curated content, but also a lot of painting, photographs from artists, so really, really great content. And this is very different from, for example, if you look at Pinterest, and here you have amazing nature photos. I think this collection is called, I'm not sure. Nature is Amazing. That's the name of the collection. And you can see pictures in a style that you will often find online or an advertisement or on Instagram, all this kind of stuff. And they are very colorful and high contrast and high saturation, and they look like candy, and they have very often extreme points of view or extreme perspectives or very kind of rare situations. And all of that looks kind of great, and it's made to impress you and entertain you and make you happy for a short amount of time. So this is basically fast food for the eyes. But it doesn't really tell you or teach you much about art and about developing your eye or your senses for art, your understanding of why things are created. This is entertainment. It's great for advertisement, it's great for a short, nice moment on the internet, but to really understand and to develop your skill and your understanding, Google Arts and Culture is a lot better. And surprisingly, the best way to do it is to look at classic paintings. So let's look at some of them and understand why they are important, even if you're a designer, even if you're a photographer, even if you just use computers and modern digital kind of tools and skills. Classic paintings are a great way to understand art. So, for example, here we have a painting by Canaletto, and one thing that you might notice at the first sight, and that is true for most classic paintings, that there is very little color or different kind of colors in it. And it is much more about composition, it is much more about making a lot from very few elements. So let's look at another painting. Look, this is not a painting, it's a print actually. It's by Hiroshige, and this is number one of the 100 famous views of Edo. So this is from the Edo time, and this is of course Asian art, and you can see again there's very little colors in here, and it's working with very little elements and trying to make the most of it and trying to work with the composition and using a lot of interesting tricks to create with less color, a more interesting picture. And of course you can say, well, the reason why he's using less color is, of course, in a print or even in a painting, you are reduced alone by the technical elements. Because if you look at the painting, you don't want to mix too much colors, prepare too much colors. In the day, when this picture, for example, this painting was created, they had to make their own painting fluids by hand in their studio. It took hours to prepare that stuff. So to reduce the workload, they mixed less colors and then tried to mix these fewer colors with each other to create the picture. And the same is true for a print. You want to have as little print stages as possible. So you can see there is red and there is blue and there is not much else going on. There's a little bit of yellow here, and the rest is a composition of the other colors. So, example, to get brown, for example. And you will find this in a lot of paintings that you have red and brown because you can create them more easily. And but this is not the only reason why this is done. One of the most important reasons to try to reduce the colors and all the kind of elements that you have in your pictures and try to really focus on your artistic expression is that you don't want to extract the viewer. You don't want to bring elements into it. that are not needed. You want to be really pure in your artist expression, in your artist view, and in your artist, creation, because it gives you much more ability to work with the elements that you have in your picture. And to understand this, we can really compare this in a great way to food, because everybody knows food. We have to eat every day. And of course we have fast food, but then of course we also have finer foods. Like, for example, if you take a fast food burger, there's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of taste in there. And every taste has to be very fleshy and extreme and address your palate in a very aggressive way with salt and sour and ketchup and all these kind of things mixed together. So you can't really get into the taste of a fast food burger. It's just the only purpose is to stuff your face, which is the same purpose here. It's to stuff your face with a nice picture that makes you happy for a short time, and then you're gone and it doesn't matter anymore. And if you compare to this is more like, you can compare it, for example, to sushi, where you have just a bit of rice and a bit of fish, and you want to really concentrate on the natural taste of that fish, of the meat. And the more you go into that, the more interesting it becomes to you, where the fish came from, the age, what it was fed, the kind of water it was in, because all of these kind of things influence the taste. Of course, it doesn't have to be about meat. You can do the same thing with any kind of plant. For example, with wine, the same thing is true, which is completely plant-based. And the more you know about wine, the more important it is for you where it came from, who made it, in what kind of barrel or metal barrel or wood barrel or whatever it was created, and all these kind of stuff that are interesting and important. And you will find over time that if we talk about taste, this is kind of a process when you consume food, because it's not just, if you eat fast food, you stuff it in your mouth, you eat it, and that's it, and you have just one taste that's going on. But with good food, you have all these different stages. You put it in your mouth, you chew it, you swallow it, you smell it. There's a taste and a texture, and there is different kind of feelings and how these feelings work together just from the structure of the food. And the same, of course, is true when you look at art, when you look at a painting or a photograph, or you watch a movie, all these kind of things. You look at the different elements and how they are constructed. And this, by the way, this is the really cool thing about Google Arts and Culture project. These pictures, they are really high resolution. So you can see here, okay, this maybe not, but most of them, I'm sorry, this was a bad example. Let's see if here it works better. Yeah, you can see, you can go really, really into detail. You can see every single brush stroke. And this is the importance of this project, because here you can see how things are created and how, from looking closely at them, you can see that you might even not really recognize what they are if you go closer, because they are just some simple brush strokes, but they give you an idea how the artist is working and how the artist is creating things, and how these effects that you see with your eyes and the feelings that you get from looking at the pictures are created by the skill and the materials used and how they are used. Also, with this print here, we don't have that much resolution, but you can see, for example, here you have a contrast that is set because the artist decided to not have any color in the bridge and not have any color in the walls, and with most of the people it's just black and white, and also with the boats below that, and just put little color specks here for the people. And interestingly enough, the people are also blue. On the bridge, all their clothing is blue, if there is any color at all. And with the boats down here, because of course the river is blue, the boats are not blue, they are red, and red is the opposite of blue, so you have a high contrast, but it's still in a very modest kind of way. The colors are not too extreme, they are not popping out too much. And you can compare this to up here, where you have this kind of sunset, which is a much more extreme red, so to speak, yeah. And there you have some other bluish colors that are mixed a little bit with red, so they're a bit darker. And so very little color and very accentuated use of the color and the contrast and the composition and how these kind of things work. And even here you can see you have red here and you have red here, and of course normally the houses here would also be red from the sunset, but the artist decided to have a better contrast and a better dynamic in the picture and a better overall composition. He left all these houses white and just have this part here red and this part here red, and you can see just from the shape of this is probably kind of a fog that's moving in over the river. Even up here it looks kind of foggy with these round endings here. So there's a lot of things that you get from very little detail. And let's look at some other pictures. Here you have something from Pizarro, the apple harvest. This is an interesting picture because this is from the pointillism kind of painting. And pointillism means that you see here and you see not much color when you look at the picture, but when you go very much into the detail, look at the individual brush strokes, it takes to load a little bit, you can see that the artists actually work with pure colors. There's a pure yellow, a pure red, a pure blue, and putting them next to each other works in our brain because our eye and our brain are trying to analyze what they are seeing, and when these colors are put together, they mix inside of our view and our brain. And this is how modern printing processes work, with just 3 colors plus black. And here, of course, you have more colors. He's not reduced to just 3 colors, but you can see that he's building colors by putting pure colors next to each other. So this is a very interesting process. And again, looking at these processes, understanding how and why artists work in this way gives you a lot of understanding what art is, why art is created, and from this alone, you can understand that art, of course, is much more than just the picture that you look at. There is a history behind it, a culture, a philosophy, an aspiration as an artist to create something. And of course, there is a reason why the artist decided to work in this way. And it's not just for fun that he wanted to try out if this would work or not. This is a kind of, how can I say, dialogue with the history of art, with the things that were going on in his time and before his time in art, and how he can change the perception and the understanding of art and find new approaches of how to work as an artist and how to go beyond the material that you have and the possibilities that you have. So reading up on art history is really important. And you can see here, every picture shows the name of the museum where you can find it. So when you are in a city where you have museums, and it can be any kind of museum, of course, it can be about design or photography or painting or illustration or crafts, is also an interesting, or just religious museums. There is always processes that you can learn and you can absorb, and they give you inspirations and they give you also understanding why these people created the work. So let's look at another work, which is a photographic work by Jeff Wall, which is a famous artist, famous photographer in the art. And you might think, why is this art? Why would this be worth a ton of money? And the reason for it is not obvious at the first moment, because it looks like a snapshot. There doesn't seem to be anything too special about that, unless you go into it and understand the background and the art history and why it was created. And again, you can see here, there's very little color in it, but there is a lot of composition in it. There's a lot of going on in the picture to analyze, to understand, to learn from, and to really get into this dialogue, this ongoing dialogue of art and culture, what is going on in these processes. And this picture, because Jeff Wall actually studied art history, so all his works have a very strong reference to classic art, this is a reference to this painting, which is called Las Meninas by Velázquez. And the interesting part about this picture, which is very unique in art history, is that you can see here that we are looking at the picture from the perspective of a mirror. So you can see here is the painter, and there is the main subject of the painting that is creating over here on the canvas. And everybody in the picture is looking at a mirror, which we are in. But as you know, you can't stand inside of a mirror. So we are basically on a metaphysical plane. We are inside of a world that does not exist. And if you think about it, what does not exist, but you can look at it? A painting, of course. So we are in the same metaphysical space. It's just created, but it's not real, like a painting is. So this is a very interesting reference or kind of note about what is a painting, what is going on in art, how is all this culture that surrounds us, that we live in, that is so important of us, how is it all created? And you can see here that this is referencing this painting. You can see here is the artist, and we are in the mirror, and the camera is basically representing the canvas in this situation, because the camera, of course, is taking the picture like the canvas is taking the picture in the classic form. And here we have the model looking into the picture. So reading up on this stuff and understanding why it is created and how it is important is very important, of course, for art, but also for training your artistic understanding and your skill and your eye and your artistic expression and language. So this is really, really nice and great. And a good thing, a very nice thing to do to train your eye is portraits. I find that portraits are one of the greatest ways to learn, because there is so much going on in them on such a little kind of space and subject. This is from a female painter. There's a big topic right now on Google Arts and Culture about the forgotten female artist. So it is a very important part to look at. Really advise you to do that. And in a portrait, you just have the person and trying to portray the person. And a portrait is a really important element of art and of photography, because it's very different from the normal portrait that you find in your passport. This is just a representation of what you look like for the government or for different kind of control stages to compare your face to your passport. But a portrait is something different. A portrait is an artistic expression of your person, who you are, and all these kind of different elements about your personality, about you and what you do and your aspirations and your work and your position in life, and all these kind of things should be captured inside of a portrait. So there is a lot of preparation. So when you read in magazines that an artist or a photographer was contracted to make a portrait of a famous figure, and then they spend weeks and months living with that person and looking at their daily life and making notes and all these kind of things, and you would think, why would they do that for just one portrait? This is the reason why. If you really want to do a portrait, you have to know the person, understand the person, and try to find a way to capture the personality and the history and the culture of this person in one picture. And this is one reason why portraits are interesting. But the other reason is, if you look at this painting, for example, you see a lot of artistic tricks that you can also use as a photographer while you're photographing, but also in post-processing, you can fake a lot of this stuff. For example, if you look at the head here, you see a lot of very interesting details. A classic thing that you do in art that you find in a lot of paintings is, for example, here you have the bright side of the face, and to make it stand out more, it's dark behind the bright side of the face. And to bring out the bright side more and to make you look more at this side of the face, the other side of the face has to be darker. So this is why this part of the face and this part of the hair is in the shadow. And now we would have a problem if we have the same background, because we have dark hair and dark background. So this wouldn't go. It would be very bad for the readability of the picture. So this is why on the dark side of the face, you have a bright background, which might be counterintuitive because light wouldn't really be that way. So they improvise light. Often artists in painting, you easily can create light and shadow where there shouldn't be light and shadow. And of course, this is why photographers work with a ton of lights in their studios, because they want to create artificial light like it wouldn't look in real life, and point out different elements in their picture and create this kind of scenery. So they are also very influenced by classic painting. And another thing, of course, that you can see here, that you have this kind of highlight with this blue. What is it called? I'm kind of not finding the way right now. This kind of blue fashion element, let's say, which sets a nice note and also works in contrast with the skin color and this kind of reddish area here, and this is really a good combination. So you find also this in a lot of pictures, of course, and again, this is a contrast color. You have the red lips and you have the blue here in the fabric, and the blue is basically bringing out more of the red, and the red is bringing out more of the blue. So these work very good together. And this is also, nothing of this, of course, is left to chance. And like I said before, when you look at this painting, you can see there is very little color used. So you're not distracted, you're not confused with anything. So you have blue and red, and there you have blue and red, and then you have a little bit of brown colors here in the middle. And that's basically it. And you have a little bit of brown colors in the background. So they don't mix in a ton of different colors, and nothing about that is very flashy. And of course, when you read about this color combination of blue and red and the white colors, this, of course, is also a reference to a religion, to Christian religion. And yeah. So this is not by chance. So there's a lot of thought going into the composition, into the expression and idea behind the work. And this is basically what artistic work is about, and why it takes a lot of preparation to create something. So don't go too crazy now with creating your own works and try to prepare them for weeks. It's better at the moment, when you're a beginner, to just try to work and try to maybe be clumsy and put too much in your picture. That's not a problem. But it's important at the same time to learn from these works and how they try to reduce things and get them out of the way, so they don't stand in the way of your artistic expression of what you actually want to show in your picture, and not to mix tastes and elements and contrasts and colors that you don't need for your work. A good way, I think, to understand this, if you think about a movie director, and often if you look at they have these kind of, how is it called? Behind the scenes, where they talk about a voiceover about the movie, where they talk how they created it and what they left out and stuff like that. And you have a lot of cut scenes. And often you hear the director say, well, we created this scene and it costs a lot of money and we have already shot it, and it was, but it just didn't add anything to the movie. It just distracted it, and we built up all this arc of feelings and emotion and story, and then there came this scene and it just breaks the moment. It doesn't fit, and this is why we left it out of the movie. And the same thing is true when you're a designer or you're a photographer or you're an artist, that you try to find things where you say, is this really necessary? Do I need this or that element, or does it distract from my picture? Do I need so much color? Do I need so many different colors? And what are the emotions? What is the background and the history of these colors? And how can I use them to create what I want to express in my work? So all these kind of thoughts put together are the ingredients that you use to create a great work. And observing them in other works. And I find that painting is a really good way to find this, or old classic art, because they have not only been reduced by the technical abilities, but also have been very strict with their artistic expressions. You can find a lot more and learn a lot more from these kind of things to understand why people do that and how they work and how these effects also are created. And this is also, like I said, this is even if you work completely digitally with photography and post-processing and all the kind of effects you have. When you look closely about the style of the artist, how the artists work, and every artist is working a little bit different. They have their own tricks, their own kind of things that they do, how they create feelings and expressions and highlights and emotions in the picture. And you can take away a lot of that. You can learn a lot of this and try it in your own works if it works for you. And in most of the cases, you will find that they try to reduce and try to cut away all of the things that you don't need and just leave the stuff in it that is really needed for it, and try to maximize the effect and the artist's importance of these elements that they actually leave in. And these are the greatest artworks that are the very simplest, the very reduced. And this is also why we often have this confusion in modern art, where people say, well, my kid could do the same thing. Technically speaking, yes, your kid could do the same thing, yes. But artistically speaking, philosophically speaking, from an expert point of view, all the things that flow into the work, your kid could not do that. They, from a material point, maybe, but from what it really means as an artistic expression and as your artistic development, that's a completely different kind of story. It's a completely different kind of thing. And this is why this kind of picture, or you of course know this kind of picture, is so different from this kind of stuff. And the more you look at it, the more you understand that this is entertainment, and it's nice, and it has its purpose. But this is art, and this is very different, and this trains your eye a lot more. What is this down here? I don't know. Let's get it out of the way. Of course, this is Edward Hopper. I will finish with this picture. It is really good to look at, and I think this is one of the most misunderstood works in American art, because almost everybody knows this picture, and you think it looks happy, has nice colors. You think people are going out, having a nice evening. They are talking with each other. There's a barkeeper asking this guy something. Hey, how was your day? What kind of drink do you want? All this kind of stuff. But actually, when you know Edward Hopper and read about his works and understand the expression and the story that he has in his pictures, and then you look closely at the picture, for example, like zoom in here just on these people, you will see, and now when you go close up, you will especially see all of these people, they have kind of a distanced and bored and lonely, separated expression on their face. None of these people is happy. None of them are having a good time. They are all separated, and they are even separated by the visual elements in the picture. Sorry, I'm kind of confused by this kind of zooming thing here. Sorry. So if you look at the picture, there's a lot of frames going on. For example, here the building is a frame, but then you have a second frame here inside with the windows. This is not just chance. This is not just an architectural element. This is framing, again, these people inside of the bigger frame. So you just look at them, and then there is another frame back here that is separating these people from the guy in front of here. And you can see here a very interesting element, that you have a very thick wall, and there is a very harsh light change going on here. So this is a lot darker than this part inside. And again, this is not chance, not just by chance. This is to have a very hard line that is separating this guy from this woman. So even her cup is outside of the frame of the bartender here. So you can really have a visual separation of every person, and they are not looking at each other, and they are not talking at each other. There's another door frame framing this guy over here, so he's also separated from the rest of the people, and he's not even looking in their direction. He's somewhere looking outside of the window. So everything about this is about this kind of thing that's happening in modern cities, where you have millions and millions of people living in the same city, but a lot of them, they feel separated and lonely and not that happy, and they don't manage to connect to each other. And even if this is an older picture, this is still a situation that happened and started, of course, with modern cities. This kind of being included in a big culture, but at the same time being excluded from the social structure because you can't connect to the other people. So this is very interesting. You can see that the actual things that are going on in the picture are very different from what you would expect at the first moment. And of course, Edward Hopper is also playing with these kinds of elements of having something that's at the first moment looks happy, but actually it is not happy, because this is what we also have in this kind of situations. We live in cities that give us so much and have all these structures and bars where we can go and meet people, and dating pages and parties, and at the same time it is so hard for us to meet other people, and there is so many people who are alone in their lives. So this is also a contrast, an emotional contrast in the picture, brought out by these colors and compositions, even though, as again you can see in this picture, very few colors used. There is red, and this red is repeating here and here in the brown, and here in the brown, and there in the brown, and in the red of her dress, and in the red of her hair. And then you have the green from the outside of the building and these architectural elements, but even the pavement is green and has a green mix that also has the yellow mix from over here. So it's green, blue, and yellow mixed together to have this kind of impression, which of course you can do with colors, because they don't have to be wet mixed. You can paint one color and then the next color on top of it. So you can have a yellowish green without creating another color at the same time. So, okay, this is the video for today, the behind the scenes, the first behind the scenes episode. I hope you liked it. It was pretty long. Tell me if you like the length. I can also do it shorter. I think I talked a little bit too much. Thank you for listening. I hope it was interesting for you, and I'm looking forward to your feedback if you want to see more of these and kind of the topics you want to see in videos. And really check out the Google Arts and Culture page. Is a really, really great resource with many nice topics on the page, from not just from art, but also from pop culture. You can see here Harry Potter, a history of magic, and you can see the history of UK punks. So they have a lot of curated, very interesting content here. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and see you in the next episode. Bye.